good pussy? What is it? And do you have it?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have tuned in to the adventures of Porno Man.
In my hot, wet, juicy, nasty.
You do what with your what?
On your knees.
Oh my.
Service me now.
I'ma grow up to be a dirty old man, kicking it up and still flirting like I can, pretending to drop shit to girls in the hand, and bend over to pick it up while I hurry get a glance up the skirt to see that pretty little ass, thinking things doing birds in the ass, like who's at your butt? Is that just how you carry your bags?
Guess this one's for the ladies. I've had conversations over the years with a number of women who are confused because guys often throw around the term, "Oh, you've got." Hell, I've done it. I mean, that make it seem like I'm not one of the people who do it, because I do. Which I realize now that leaves you ladies somewhat confused, because if this chick has some, and that one has some, and what the hell is the difference? How are you supposed to know, one, if he's telling the truth, and two, what makes you different from this one over this way? Because apparently a lot of you seem to think that to us guys, all pussy is the same, and that's not true. That's not true at all. Some of us are assholes and try to treat it all the same, but definitely not the same thing. So, first thing is, what is it? By and large, the idea of what good pussy is really comes down to chemistry between the two people. And I'll get more into that a little later. So there's different aspects or terms or whatever you want to call it used to help determine what good pussy is. The first one of those is how tight it is. Often the pussy that most guys refer to when they're referring to tight is those that are the tightest, the harder to get into without being impossible to get into, because that's annoying. So, the tighter it is, the snugger it is, the more friction that it provides to the guy who's stroking, all tends to be good stuff. And I say tend to be because there is a group of men out there, and from my experience, from what I've seen, definitely in the minority, who actually prefer women who have looser pussies. Now, there are some guys who are into fisting and things of that nature and stuff like that. You tend to need one that is a lot more, that can stretch more, I should say, without causing discomfort and pain to the woman. And they're just those who just like big open pussies. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just what turns those particular people on versus what turns other people on. So, again, it's kind of a preference thing, but generally when they're referring to that, they are referring to the pussy is relatively tight. So, in direct relationship to what I'm referring to is how wet it gets. How wet it is greatly obviously depends for the woman in regards to how turned on she is and the foreplay that's given and so forth and so on. But for men, the wetter it is when he initiates anything, or he's getting around to entering her, or whatever the case may be, it's often attributed to whether or not the pussy is good. In some ways, it is not always a representation of how interested she is in him so much as it is in the situation, especially when we're talking about swinging. But I digress, because that leads me down another road, not where I want to go. Anyway, so how naturally wet it is tends to factor into that, especially when we're talking about someone who is very tight, because the easier it is to slide into such a snug place, the better. Also, any guy who has any kind of sense about him, if she's already pretty wet, usually an indication that she's into whatever's going on. So that helps. Muscle control. Ha ha ha. This is where cables and such come into play, because it's one thing to be tight. It's another when your muscles are interacting with your partner while you're playing. So, and I don't mean just when you're coming. The ability to tighten and loosen your muscles around him is a huge thing. To get that squeeze as you're pulling out, as if you want it to come back in or don't want it to leave at all, or that unexpected twitch, helps to heighten things. Not every woman is able to do this. I would think a good portion of that is simply because they have not bothered to practice and or know about that making any difference at all. There have been some women who I've played with on the regular, and I start trying to help them find that, because their ability to use muscle control usually helps with their ability to climax faster and stronger. By no means am I an expert on this. Obviously, I'm a man, not a female, but this has just been my experience. And any woman who knows differently or would like to back me up, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Help us out. Helping us out helps you. Help me to help you. Anyway, so how the he looks is also a determining factor. So how it looks will vary from guy to guy, whether it's pleasing to him or not. But just know that having one that isn't ashy or stubbly, or for those guys who like little to no hair, overly hairy. For those who like hairy ones, to little hair. Again, you kind of got to know your target audience here. Whether the lips are thin, fat, if the area around the immediate outer lips, what kind of condition does that seem to be in? No scratches, sores, things of that nature. You do want to present a nice looking member, much like you women would say about men, especially when they're trying to pass off pictures to you, trying to entice you into doing whatever with their magic wand. You tell them, you need to oil up, grease it up. Don't, be all ashy, or, make a good presentation. So same goes the other way. So probably the last of the terms I'm going to use here before I get into the deeper, more subjective stuff, is skill. So skill comes down to the ability to be able to read your partner and knowing what to do when to help heighten the situation. And rarely does anybody a natural at that. It's something that's got to be learned, again, because it tends to switch up from partner to partner. But again, paying attention and being able to kind of feel your way around, so to say, or because you have enough experience, you have a large body of knowledge to use to help you tweak things here and there and quickly find what it is that a guy does or does not like, will help with that as well. So, when to use a hand, when not to use a hand, when to look him in the eye, when to put your finger up his butt, when to grab him by the arm, when you should whisper in his ear versus when you shouldn't, how to encourage a stroke versus not. Some guys like it quiet, some don't, there's skill involved in being able to read a person, and it usually takes a bit of experience, and it kind of is what it is. But all those things together are a part of what makes up what is good pussy. But despite all of the stuff that I just said, the thing that matters the most, what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is personality. It's about the chemistry that you two have when doing it. Like, all that stuff can kind of go to the wayside. It could be a negative for almost every one of those categories. But as long as the chemistry between the two of you, when you look each other in the eye, or not, as the case may be, that the moans, the vibe that you give one another when you are engaged is more than all the other things I named together. So how you interact with one another, and ladies, I'm sure you understand, because you got to think about your experiences and how one guy might react to another one, and how that brings you to where you want to be quicker or stronger. Same thing goes for men. Now, a lot of them probably don't even give it much thought, but that's really what it comes down to. It is absolutely the kind of chemistry that you have from one to the other. That other stuff might help edge you out in regards to if you're their all-time favorite, better than this one or that one, or whatever the case might be. But in the end, chemistry is the base that you build everything else on. And so, do you have good pussy? I guess, generally speaking, that's going to depend on the guy that you're with and the chemistry that you two have. So, a guy can say that you have good pussy in her, and it could be good, just in different ways. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So, that's pretty much it. That's my take on, good pussy. What is it? And do you have it? Any questions or comments, again, leave them in the comment section. And till next time, peace.
That mean you a dirty whore? Should have been me just telling you more to give a big arm and stand ovation. Guess I was just born to porn. Let me ask you something, baby.
Smack my ass.
Do I make you horny?
Smack my ass like you mean it.
Do I? Yeah!
Well, the stereo, and can she go? Should have named the song. I love a girl that swallows.
That had the answer. Yes, a bunch of mama said I'm too young. Need a porn is a long boy, now corrupt.